When Traoré's jet suddenly changed course mid-flight, the radio went silent. In that moment, like a ship thrown into uncharted waters, without a compass, leadership under fire emerged in that cockpit. While most would panic facing armed interceptors, Traoré navigated those crucial 90 seconds with calculated precision. His decision saved his mission and reverberated across the continent. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Control over not just the aircraft, but what it represented, hung in the balance. This is the untold story of how a routine flight evolved into a defining moment that would reshape perceptions of African autonomy, courage, and resilience in international airspace. The early morning air carried a sense of routine as Traoré's jet climbed to cruising altitude. The captain announced clear skies ahead for their 3-hour diplomatic flight. Traoré settled into his seat, reviewing notes for his upcoming meeting with regional allies. Security matters across the border regions required immediate attention, and this summit represented a critical step in establishing a unified approach. 40 minutes into the flight, the first sign of trouble appeared. The co-pilot emerged from the cockpit, his expression controlled but tense. He approached Traoré's security chief and whispered something that caused the man's posture to change instantly. Air traffic control has ordered an immediate course change, the co-pilot announced abruptly, turning to address Traoré directly. We must divert to Marston International instead of continuing to our planned destination. What reason did they give? Traoré asked. None, sir. When we requested clarifications, they simply repeated the instruction. The timing was suspicious. Just 14 hours earlier, Traoré had delivered a speech denouncing foreign interference in regional affairs. His words had been direct, naming specific nations and their economic extraction policies that undermined local sovereignty. The speech had generated immediate international attention, with several foreign embassies issuing formal statements of concern before midnight. One Western embassy had specifically labeled his comments dangerously provocative to regional stability. In the cabin, the atmosphere transformed. Traoré's advisors huddled together, speaking in hushed tones. His head of security attempted to make satellite calls, only to find connections repeatedly dropping. The normal channels of communication with ground teams became restricted, with messages going unanswered. Sir, examine this new flight path. The navigator approached with a map, pointing to a route that curved distinctly eastward. Marston International sits in territory controlled by a government that publicly criticized your recent policy decisions. Their foreign minister called your economic reforms dangerous nationalism during last month's European summit. While tension mounted among his team, Traoré maintained a calm demeanor. He requested position updates and analyzed each new piece of information with measured focus. An hour into the diversion, the situation escalated. In the cockpit, the radar screen showed 3 unidentified aircraft tracking their trajectory. They appeared 12 minutes ago, the pilot explained. Their formation and speed suggest military aircraft. They haven't attempted communication. And ground control? Traoré asked. They acknowledge our transmission, but provide no information about these aircraft. When we ask direct questions, they instruct us to maintain our current heading. In response, Traoré's security team moved to alert status. The head of personal security checked sidearms, while communications specialists attempted to establish contact through backup channels. Through the mounting pressure, Traoré remained analytical, asking precise questions about fuel reserves, distance to various airports, and the specifications of the aircraft following them. After 90 minutes of the diverted route, Traoré examined the navigation systems again. The intercepting aircraft had adjusted to a pattern that commercial pilots would recognize from international protocols. The standard approach for forcing an unauthorized aircraft to land. "This isn't standard procedure," Traoré stated firmly. "We're being deliberately redirected to hostile territory." He pointed to the map. "They've kept us on a course avoiding all allied nations' airspace. The restricted communications, the timing after yesterday's speech, the destination airport's political alignment. This is an attempted capture operation." The pilot and co-pilot exchanged glances as the reality became clear. They weren't experiencing a routine diversion. Someone wanted Traoré's aircraft to land where he could be detained. "Sir, what are your orders?" the captain asked. Traoré studied the radar, noting the narrowing distance to the interceptors. "We have approximately 2 minutes before we need to make our intentions clear. What happens in the next 90 seconds will determine everything." 3. 90 seconds of critical decision. The air in the cockpit grew heavy with tension as the 3 interceptor jets moved closer on the radar screen. Counting down from 90 seconds, the pilots exchanged nervous glances. Meanwhile, in the main cabin, Traoré's security team prepared for the worst. Some checking weapons, while others hurriedly destroyed sensitive documents. Traoré himself moved differently than everyone else. While chaos erupted around him, he calmly stood and made his way toward the cockpit. His personal guard attempted to stop him, suggesting he remain seated and protected, but Traoré simply placed a hand on the man's shoulder and continued forward. When he entered the cockpit, the pilots looked up with expressions that revealed their inner conflict. Trained to follow air traffic control instructions, but now facing a situation where those instructions might lead them into danger. "I need to see everything," Traoré said, positioning himself between the pilot and co-pilot's seats. He focused directly on the instruments, studying the navigation displays and communication systems. The unfiltered data told a story that second-hand reports couldn't capture. "Show me our original flight plan," he requested. The co-pilot pulled up the filed route on one screen, while keeping their current diverted path visible on another. Traoré examined both, calculating distances and angles with practiced precision. 70 seconds remaining. Options narrowing. "Something isn't right," he stated, his voice steady and methodical. With swift efficiency, Traoré began investigating. Aircraft diagnostics showed normal operation across all systems. The weather reports revealed clear conditions along their entire planned flight path. No mechanical issues, no weather phenomena. Only one explanation remained. "Try to contact our destination's air traffic control directly. Use the secondary frequency." The co-pilot tried 3 times. "Nothing, sir." "Now try our military air base at home," Traoré said. After initial contact, the communication suddenly cut off mid-transmission. "Someone is actively jamming our selective communications," Traoré concluded, turning his attention back to the radar display. "Notice their flight formation," he said, pointing to the 3 aircraft signatures. "Standard intercept procedure. 1 lead with 2 flanking positions. They're positioned to force us down if we don't comply." 50 seconds remaining. Sweat beaded on the captain's forehead. "Sir, what's your order?" the captain asked. "If we continue on this heading, we enter their airspace in 7 minutes. If we deviate now, those interceptors will likely force us down." The co-pilot added, "Air traffic control is demanding confirmation of our compliance." 30 seconds. Decisions crystallizing. Traoré stood silent, weighing options against risks. The lives of everyone aboard hung in the balance. Compliance meant potential detention in hostile territory. Evasion risked military interception with unpredictable consequences. Implement communication blackout protocol, Traoré finally ordered. Cut all non-essential transmissions. Switch to minimal emissions configuration. The pilots immediately began flipping switches, reducing their electronic signature. Now execute an immediate course correction, Traoré continued, tracing a new route. We'll head southwest toward this corridor. It's a narrow gap between their radar coverage stations. That's dangerously close to the mountain range, sir, the captain noted. We'll fly below their radar ceiling and above the terrain, Traoré acknowledged. It reduces our margin for error, but it's our chance to avoid interception. 10 seconds. Decision time. The pilots exchanged glances. Their question unspoken, but clear. Execute now, Traoré commanded. No response to their hails, no explanations. We create confusion and distance. His eyes hardened. I didn't fight for our country's sovereignty to surrender it in international airspace. Not today. The aircraft banked sharply, changing course and beginning a controlled descent. The interceptors would detect the change within moments, but coordination would cost them precious time. Time for Traoré's escape maneuver. The decision was made, but implementing this emergency maneuver would require perfect execution under extreme pressure. The real test was just beginning. The aircraft banked sharply as it veered off its assigned course. Inside the cockpit, Traoré positioned himself not as a passenger, but as an active participant in their escape. He stood firmly between the seats, one hand on each pilot's chair for stability, leaning forward to study the instruments as the plane descended. We need to maintain this heading for exactly 3 minutes, then change altitude rapidly, Traoré instructed, his voice calm despite the blaring proximity warnings. The pilots nodded in synchronized understanding. This was a team fighting for collective survival. Modern aircraft leave digital signatures that radar systems track with precision. The co-pilot activated the minimal emissions protocol, shutting down non-essential electronics to reduce their radar profile, though they couldn't become completely invisible. There, Traoré pointed to a thick band of clouds ahead. That formation extends for approximately 60 kilometers. We'll use it as cover. He traced the path on the navigational screen. We'll enter here, drop altitude inside, then emerge on a completely different vector. The captain adjusted their speed, calculating the precise moment to reach the cloud bank. The timing required perfection, like a chess master planning several moves ahead. Enter too early, and the interceptors would adjust. Too late, an opportunity vanished. Meanwhile, Traoré moved to the communication station and picked up the radio handset. Weather Station Alpha, this is Charter 457. Check-in conditions at Waypoint Sierra. Experiencing minor turbulence at our current flight level. Any advisories for the Sierra Tango corridor? The routine-sounding message contained coded information about their situation only allies would recognize. The aircraft shuddered entering the cloud bank. Visibility disappeared, instruments becoming their only guide. The captain began their descent, while maintaining heading. The co-pilot's eyes remained fixed on the radar display, watching interceptors continue on their previous trajectory. A flicker of hope crossed his face as their pursuers' confusion became evident. 30 seconds until we change heading, the captain announced, sweat beading on his forehead. If they emerged too soon, they'd be spotted immediately. Too late risked collision with rising terrain. When proximity alarms sounded as an interceptor passed less than a mile above, Traoré didn't flinch. His calm presence flowed through the cockpit, keeping everyone focused on tasks rather than fears. The violent turbulence inside the cloud became part of their dance with danger, each movement precisely calculated. As they emerged on their new heading, They navigated perilously close to mountain ranges. The navigation system continuously warned of terrain proximity. 3 degrees up, Traoré instructed as a tall ridge appeared. The aircraft climbed just enough to clear it, then descended again, hugging the land's contours like a bird of prey, skimming the landscape. The radar display showed the interceptors had recognized the deception. All 3 aircraft adjusted course, spreading into a search pattern. The distance between them grew, but so did fuel consumption. "They're splitting up to cover more area," the co-pilot observed. 2 heading southwest, 1 southeast. "That gives us an advantage." "They're guessing now," Traoré responded. After 20 minutes of the elaborate aerial ballet, climbing, descending, changing direction within valleys, using weather patterns, the captain checked their position. "I think we've done it," he said with cautious optimism. "The nearest interceptor is 40 miles east and moving away." The immediate danger had passed. Traoré's strategy had created enough confusion to break contact. Relief washed over the cockpit crew, tension draining from their shoulders. Their success brought new challenges. They now flew through unauthorized airspace with limited fuel reserves and no clear destination. They had escaped immediate capture, only to face a different uncertainty. Where could they safely land? The momentary relief in the cockpit quickly faded as reality set in. They had successfully evaded the interceptors, but now found themselves in an equally dangerous situation. The fuel gauge showed they had burned through nearly half their reserves during the evasive maneuvers. The navigation system displayed their position in unmarked airspace, far from any authorized flight corridor. The screen showed no predetermined landing options within their remaining fuel range. "Current fuel reserves give us approximately 90 minutes of flight time," the captain reported, his finger tracing circles on the map that represented their potential range. Each circle ended either in hostile territory or areas with no suitable airfields. Like an explorer with limited oxygen, every minute airborne diminished their chances of survival. Traoré studied the map with intense focus. "We need to establish contact with friendly forces without broadcasting our position to everyone else." The standard radio channels remained compromised, potentially revealing their location to the forces they had just evaded. He reached into his briefcase and removed a secure satellite phone, a personal device not connected to the aircraft's communication systems. The jamming affecting their aircraft radio couldn't block this independent channel. Traoré dialed a number from memory and waited as the encryption protocols established a connection. "General Sawadago," he said when the call connected, "we've encountered an interception attempt and have diverted from our flight plan." He spoke concisely, providing their approximate position and fuel status. Their home forces were already aware of the situation and had been trying to re-establish contact. While maintaining this critical communication link, Traoré turned to the map again. 3 countries fell within their remaining flight range. He mentally weighed each option, recalling years of diplomatic interactions, old allegiances, and personal connections that might mean the difference between safety and disaster. "This airfield here," he pointed to a location just within a neighboring country's border. "They've maintained neutral relations with us, despite pressure from certain Western powers. Their military commander attended the same training academy as I did 15 years ago. Entering another nation's airspace without clearance would typically trigger an immediate military response." Traoré knew this gamble rested on his diplomatic skill and personal connections. "We need to draft an emergency diplomatic message," Traoré told his advisors. He dictated key points, balancing urgency with respect for sovereignty, framing their approach as an emergency requiring humanitarian consideration. The wording avoided implicating any specific nation while making clear they sought temporary safe harbor. "We'll transmit this when we're within 50 miles of their border," Traoré instructed. The pilot and navigator calculated the most fuel-efficient route to their chosen destination, factoring wind patterns, altitude options, and terrain features. "We'll have approximately 15 minutes of reserve fuel upon arrival," the navigator confirmed, tension evident in his voice. As they approached the border, Traoré retrieved his satellite phone once more. Rather than calling military channels, he dialed a personal number. "Ibrahim here," he said simply. The conversation that followed was brief, conducted partly in a regional dialect that few foreigners understood. Traoré spoke as one person to another, invoking shared memories and mutual respect. 3 minutes later, their radio crackled to life. "Inbound aircraft, this is Magara Tower. We have received your emergency diplomatic request. You are cleared for priority landing on runway 04. Security forces will meet your aircraft, but will remain at a respectful distance. Please acknowledge." The captain exchanged a look of relief with Traoré before responding. As they descended toward the runway, Traoré gazed at the landscape below. They had secured immediate physical safety, but this was just the beginning of what would become a diplomatic incident spanning multiple nations. The wheels touched down on friendly soil. Outside, vehicles approached with flashing lights, but there was no sign of hostile intent. The political storm that would follow this mid-air diversion was forming on the horizon. As Traoré stepped from the aircraft onto unfamiliar tarmac, a small delegation approached with formal but genuine welcome. The emergency landing had been secured, but the diplomatic aftermath was just beginning. Within hours, Traoré's team established a secure compound at the airfield where they could work while arrangements were made for their continued journey. Local officials provided protection without intrusion, honoring the delicate balance between security and sovereignty. International news outlets crafted a convenient fiction within hours. "African leader's flight makes unscheduled landing due to navigation irregularity," read one headline. Western media described the incident as a routine error and a miscommunication between flight crews and air traffic control. Major outlets systematically omitted the interceptor aircraft and the suspicious diversion order. 3 days later, Traoré shattered this carefully constructed narrative, standing before microphones with flight path maps displayed behind him. He methodically presented the truth. "What happened in our skies was not a navigation error," he stated firmly. "It was an attempted capture operation using civilian air traffic systems to direct a government aircraft into hostile territory." He unveiled radar data showing the interceptor aircraft, communications logs revealing the suspicious orders, and intelligence connecting these actions to foreign powers who had criticized his policies. The revelation transformed public discourse across Africa. What foreign media had dismissed became a powerful symbol of resistance against external control. Commentary focused on Traoré's composure under pressure. "He didn't panic when facing armed interceptors," noted one analyst. "Instead, he analyzed the situation, identified the threat, and implemented a solution that protected everyone aboard." Military experts published detailed analyses of the evasion tactics. The use of cloud cover combined with terrain masking flight paths shows exceptional tactical awareness, wrote a retired Air Force commander in a widely shared article that validated the skill behind what appeared to be a desperate escape. The incident crystallized abstract concepts of sovereignty into tangible reality. Thousands gathered when Traoré returned home, the air vibrating with chants as the crowd waved flags and raised hand-painted signs declaring, our skies, our sovereignty, and no capture, no surrender. The emotional display represented more than support for one leader. It was the cathartic expression of a long-suppressed desire for genuine independence. Even opposition leaders stood united. Whatever our political differences, one prominent critic acknowledged, we are united in defending our nation's right to determine its own path, without foreign interference or intimidation. Regional impact was swift and concrete. Neighboring countries implemented new security protocols for official travel. Legal scholars examined the implications of using civilian air traffic systems for state-sponsored kidnapping attempts. University students organized passionate symposiums that moved beyond academic discussion to become forums for articulating a vision of true African control over African airspace. Cultural expressions cemented the incident's symbolic power. Artists depicted the cockpit moment of decision. Musicians celebrated the defiance, and cockpit decision entered everyday language as shorthand for principled choices under pressure. When addressing the Continental Unity Conference months later, Traoré elevated the incident beyond personal experience. The sovereignty we claim on paper means nothing unless we're prepared to defend it in moments of crisis. What happened in our skies that day wasn't about one leader or one nation, but about all of us who believe Africa must determine its own destiny. What began as an attempt to capture one leader had transformed into a rallying point for a continent increasingly determined to chart its own course. The full impact still unfolding in ways no one could fully predict. Leadership reveals itself not in comfortable boardrooms, but in moments of crisis. In those 90 seconds in the cockpit, Traoré showed us that true leadership combines clear thinking with decisive action. He assessed the situation, weighed the risks, and made a choice that protected both his team and his nation's sovereignty. His actions echo beyond that single flight. Independence must be actively defended when challenged, not merely declared on paper. Like a captain steering through a storm, Traoré demonstrated that resistance requires neither grand speeches nor military might, just the courage to stand firm against pressure. When the winds of coercion blow strongest, will you hold your course?